At my birthday dinner, my daughter reached across the table, snatched the gift card meant for me, laughed, and said she deserved it. Someone chuckled. Someone else told me to let it go, that it was just money. I smiled and said nothing. That part came later, but the feeling started much earlier before the food arrived. Before the laughter, before I realized how easy it had become for everyone to take something that was mine. The story you are about to hear is a work of fiction created by the Her Chains channel team, based on real-life situations to convey lessons about family, emotions, and human values. All characters and events are illustrative. My name is Maribel Knox. I have spent most of my life learning how to make myself smaller so other people could feel comfortable. I learned it early, and I practiced it well. Do not ask for much. Do not take up space. Do not turn moments into problems. Those rules followed me into adulthood, into marriage, into motherhood. By the time I reached my 60s, they felt less like choices and more like habits I no longer questioned. The dinner was not my idea. My family insisted. They said it would be nice, just something simple. I agreed because I always agree. Saying no takes more energy than people realize, especially when you have spent decades being the one who keeps things smooth. I tucked a small envelope into my bag, hoping to keep it private for a moment to myself. It was something I had bought for myself. Quietly, without telling anyone. A gift card meant for something I had postponed year after year because there was always a more practical place for the money to go. Rent gaps, utility bills, groceries, emergencies that never seemed to stop being urgent. I told myself this one was mine. When we sat down, I placed the envelope beside my plate without thinking much of it. My daughter noticed it immediately. She always noticed things like that. Her eyes lingered, sharp and familiar, the way they did whenever she spotted something she assumed would eventually be hers anyway. I did not say anything. I never do at first. I waited for the food, for the conversation to settle, for the moment to pass. That was my pattern. Wait long enough, and problems usually dissolved on their own. But that night, nothing dissolved. It only shifted. And as I sat there smiling politely, I felt something tighten inside me. Not anger yet, just a quiet awareness that the balance I had maintained for years was no longer holding. By the time the appetizers arrived, the envelope had already stopped feeling like mine. That was how it always went. Things slowly drifted out of my hands until I could no longer remember when I had last held them with certainty. My daughter leaned back in her chair and said, "I'm going to be late with rent again this month." Her voice carried across the table, calm as ever. But I noticed the tension beneath it. I said, "How short are you?" She waved a hand. "It's fine. You can just move things around like you always do. Like I always do." The phrase landed heavier than she intended. Across the table. My sister murmured, "It's hard out there right now." She didn't look at me when she said it. She never did. I nodded. I know. What no one said was that the account covering my daughter's rent, phone, and utilities was in my name. It had always been in my name. I set it up years ago when she moved back to Portland after another job fell through. At first, it was temporary. A few months, maybe 6. Enough time to get steady again. What started as temporary support had quietly extended month after month. "You still have that account, right?" my daughter asked, finally meeting my eyes, "the one that handles the bills." "Yes," I said. "Good," she replied. "Because my hours might get cut." There was no thank you. There never was. Gratitude had quietly been replaced by assumption. I took a sip of water and said, "We should talk about a timeline." She frowned. "Why are you making this weird?" My sister glanced between us. "Let's not do this tonight." I stayed quiet. That was expected of me, too. My daughter leaned forward, lowering her voice. "I'm not asking for anything extra. I just need what you've been helping with. You know I can't manage without it. Manage without it, as if the support existed on its own, detached from the person providing it. I thought about the bills I had rearranged over the years, the trips I postponed, the savings I dipped into because someone else needed more time. I had never announced those sacrifices. I had made them quietly, the way I did everything else. The waiter returned, and the conversation shifted. Someone joked. Someone laughed. The moment passed without resolution, just like all the others before it. But something inside me had started paying closer attention, not to the words being said, but to the certainty behind them, the belief that what I gave was no longer a choice, but a given. I reached for my fork, my hand steady, my expression calm. No one noticed the shift. They rarely do when it happens slowly. My daughter didn't become this way overnight. I watched it happen in small, reasonable moments that never seemed dangerous on their own. When she was younger, waiting frustrated her. If she wanted something, she wanted it now. I used to say, "Just be patient." And she would roll her eyes and say, "Why? There's no point if you can fix it." And I usually did fix it. After her divorce, she moved back into my house for what we agreed would be a short while. She said, "Just until I get back on my feet." I said, "Of course." I didn't ask how long that would take. When she lost the next job, she cried at my kitchen table and said, "I can't do this again." I said, "You won't have to." I intended it to reassure her, though she seemed to take it as a guarantee. My sister once pulled me aside after one of those conversations. "You're doing too much," she said quietly. "She needs to feel some pressure." I smiled and replied, "She's already under enough." That became my answer for everything. At family gatherings, my daughter spoke over me without noticing. If I tried to finish a sentence, she would say, "I know, Tom," and keep talking. No one corrected her. I didn't either. It felt easier to let it slide than to risk an argument that would leave everyone tense and me painted as difficult. When she asked for help, it was never framed as a request. It sounded like logistics. "You'll cover the utilities, right? Or just send it like last time." The tone was casual, efficient, confident. Once, months ago, I said, "I need to slow down a bit." She laughed lightly and said, "You always say that." The conversation ended there. I told myself I was being supportive, a good mother, someone her child could rely on, but support slowly turned into structure. And structure turned into expectation. She didn't push me aside. She stepped forward, certain I would move back. Over the years, I had smoothed obstacles for her, making it easy for her to avoid discomfort. Sitting at that birthday table, listening to her talk as if my help existed independently of me, I realized how little resistance she expected, and how carefully I had trained her not to expect any at all. The envelope wasn't meant to start anything. I slipped it onto the table the way someone might set down a napkin, casual, almost forgettable. My sister noticed it and said, "What's that?" I answered. "Just something small." "For who?" she asked. "For me," I said, and felt the weight of that word settle in the space between us. My daughter glanced over, her eyes narrowing for half a second before she smiled. "Since when do you buy yourself gifts?" I said. "Since now." She laughed softly. "You don't need to do that." I didn't respond. Inside the envelope was a gift card I had bought with my own money, not meant to impress anyone, not meant to solve anyone's problem. It was for something I had put off year after year because there was always a better use for it. Something more responsible. Something more urgent. My daughter leaned closer. "How much is it?" "Enough," I said. She shook her head. "You should have just told me. I could have used that." The way she said it made it sound practical, almost helpful, as if she were offering to take a burden off my hands. My sister chuckled and said, She's not wrong. I folded my hands in my lap to keep from touching the envelope again. Claiming it now would have felt defensive, territorial. I had spent my life avoiding that posture. The server returned, and the conversation moved on. But the envelope stayed where it was, thin and quiet. It had taken me years to choose something for myself without justification, and now it sat between us, waiting, like a test I hadn't studied for, one I was about to fail without meaning to. The moment didn't arrive loudly. It slid into the room the way disrespect usually does, confident, unannounced, assuming permission. My daughter reached across the table before I realized what she was doing. Her fingers closed around the envelope, quick and practiced, as if she'd done it 100 times before. "Hey," I said, my voice low, automatic. She didn't look at me. She pulled out the gift card, glanced at it, then laughed. Not nervously, comfortably. "I deserve this," she said. Loud enough for everyone to hear. The table went still for half a breath. Then someone laughed. It wasn't cruel laughter. It was worse than that. It was indulgent, like this was a familiar joke we were all expected to understand. I said, "That's mine." She finally met my eyes. "Mom, come on." She waved the card once. Dismissive. "You don't even need it." My sister smiled and said, "She's not wrong." My daughter leaned back in her chair, still holding the card. "I'm the one struggling right now," she added. "I've got rent, bills, everything piling up. This." She tapped the card against the table. "This would actually help." I felt heat rise in my chest. Slow and unfamiliar. I bought that for myself. She laughed and tucked the card away. A few guests glanced uncomfortably but stayed silent. The words landed cleanly, rehearsed, as if she'd said them before in other forms. Just money, just help, just you, around the table. Reactions flickered and faded. One cousin looked down at her plate. Someone else cleared their throat. No one reached for the card. No one told her to stop. I heard myself say, "Give it back." She tilted her head. "Why are you making this a thing?" My sister jumped in gently, the way people do when they want peace without justice. "It's her birthday," she said. "Meaning me. Let's not ruin the night." My daughter nodded. "Exactly." She slid the gift card into her purse. "See, even she gets it." I didn't correct her. My mouth closed around words that had never worked before. I looked at my plate, then at my hands, folded neatly the way they had been folded my entire adult life. I smiled. Not because I agreed, but because everyone expected me to. "Fine," I said. The conversation restarted in pieces. Someone asked about dessert, someone else mentioned traffic. The gift card was gone. So was something else, though I couldn't name it yet, as laughter returned to the table, easy and careless. I realized how familiar this moment felt. Not the theft itself, but the way it was brushed aside. The way cruelty became humor the second no one wanted to deal with it. I sat there, quiet, listening, and understood that this wasn't about a card at all. It was about how easily everyone had learned to laugh when I was the one being taken from. The gift card disappeared into my daughter's purse, and no one said a word about it. That silence settled fast, like it belonged there. My cousin cleared his throat and said, "So, has anyone tried the salmon?" Someone laughed too loudly. Another person reached for the breadbasket. The table shifted back into motion, smooth and practiced, as if what had just happened was a minor interruption instead of a line crossed. I looked at my sister. She wouldn't meet my eyes. My daughter leaned toward me and said quietly, "You're being dramatic." I replied, "I haven't said anything." She smiled. Exactly. That was when I understood how complete the permission was, not just from her, but from everyone else. They were not waiting for my reaction. They were waiting for my compliance. Aunt Linda, who had watched the whole thing, murmured, "Let's just enjoy the night." She said it kindly, as if kindness could undo what had already been done. I nodded once. I had learned long ago that nodding ended conversations faster than honesty. The waiter returned and asked, "Everything all right here?" My sister answered before I could. "We're great. Just celebrating. Celebrating." The word sat there, hollow. My daughter pulled out her phone, already distracted, already finished with me. The moment had passed for her the second she got what she wanted. I noticed how easily the room adjusted around her. Chairs shifted, voices softened. The discomfort rerouted itself away from the person who caused it and toward the person who might acknowledge it. I took a sip of water to give my hands something to do. They were steady. That surprised me. I had expected shaking, maybe tears. Instead, there was a dull clarity settling in, the kind that comes when something finally stops confusing you. No one told her to apologize. No one asked if I was okay. No one suggested giving the card back. The absence of those words was louder than the laughter that followed. My sister leaned over and said, "You know how she is." I answered, "I do." That was the truth. I had always known. What I hadn't admitted, until that moment, was how much everyone else knew too, and how comfortable they were letting it continue. Conversation filled the space again, thin and careful. I stayed quiet, not because I had nothing to say, but because I finally understood that speaking had never been the point. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't push my chair back or reach for my daughter's purse. I did what I had always done when things crossed a line. I smiled. "Fine," I said. My daughter relaxed instantly, as if that one word confirmed everything she believed about me. "See," she said, glancing around, "it's not a big deal." My sister nodded. "Good. Let's not turn this into something. That was what my boundaries were always called, when they made people uncomfortable. I picked up my fork and took a bite. My hands were steady. That surprised me. The calm didn't come from acceptance. It came from clarity. My daughter leaned closer. "You know I'll pay you back." I met her eyes. "You always say that," she laughed. "And you always let it go." There it was. Not an insult, not an apology, just certainty. The conversation moved on without me, but I stayed present in a different way. I noticed how easily everyone adjusted around her, how no one looked at me, how my silence was expected. When the plates were cleared, my daughter kissed my cheek. "Love you, Mom." "I know," I said. I smiled again, smaller this time. Not for them, for myself. That smile wasn't permission. It was a line. And this time, I didn't plan to step back from it. The house was silent when I got home. I set my keys down, took off my coat, and stood in the kitchen longer than necessary, letting the quiet settle. I had spent years moving through that room on autopilot, cooking for someone else, planning around someone else's needs. That night, I stayed still. I logged into the account I had kept track of over the years, checking rent and utility payments. My phone buzzed. A message from my daughter. "Thanks again." That helped. I didn't reply. Instead, I called the bank. The woman who answered sounded tired but polite. I told her my name. I confirmed my identity. She asked what I needed. "I want to stop the recurring transfers." I said. There was a pause. "All of them." "Yes." She read the amounts back to me, careful and slow. I confirmed each one. Rent supplement, electricity, internet, phone. Each yes felt lighter than the last. "These can be stopped immediately," she said. "Future payments won't go through." "That's fine," I replied. She asked if I wanted to leave the account open. "For now," I said. "Just remove the access." Another pause. Then, "All right, that's done." I thanked her and hung up. The call lasted less than 10 minutes. No raised voices, no threats, no speeches. Just a decision finally spoken out loud. I sat at the kitchen table and looked at my hands. They weren't shaking. I had imagined guilt would rush in, panic maybe. What came instead was a steady sense of relief, the kind that follows honesty after a long stretch of pretending. I sent one message. We'll talk tomorrow. I didn't explain. I didn't apologize. I didn't justify myself. For the first time in years, I let the silence work for me. My phone rang before I finished my coffee. Why didn't my rent go through? My daughter demanded. The confidence from last night was gone. The landlord sent a notice. I know, I said. There was a pause. So fix it. I'm not, I replied. She sighed sharply. Don't do this. I need that money. It was never your money. I said, that's not fair, she snapped. You've always handled it. I handled it, I said. I didn't owe it. Her voice softened. I told you I'd pay you back. You always say that. Silence. Then anger. All this? Over a gift card, I stayed calm. I'm not punishing you. I stopped paying. She laughed once. Thin and bitter. Unbelievable. After everything I'm dealing with. I let her words from the night before return exactly as they were. Let it go. I said, it's just money. The line went quiet. I could hear her breathing. Fast and uneven. You can't be serious, she said. I am. She hung up. A moment later, my sister texted, what are you doing? She's panicking. I turned my phone face down and took another sip of coffee. For the first time in years, the urgency wasn't mine, and I didn't chase it. My daughter came by 3 days later. She stood in my doorway, arms crossed, already bracing for a fight. I need help, she said. Not hello, not sorry, I replied. You need a plan. Her jaw tightened. So that's it. You're done being my mother. I'm done being taken for granted, I said. She looked past me into the house, as if expecting the old version of me to appear and smooth this over. You know I can't do this alone. I know, I answered, and I still love you. That stopped her. Love had always come bundled with money before. This time, it didn't. We sat at the table. She spoke about rent, about pressure, about fear. I listened. When she finished, I said, I'll help you figure things out. I won't fund disrespect. She didn't argue. She nodded once, slow and unsure. After she left, I stayed seated, feeling the weight of my 64 years settle into something solid. I had learned that boundaries aren't punishments. They're clarity. Help without respect turns love into obligation. And silence teaches the wrong people the wrong lessons. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to like it. Share your thoughts in the comments, or subscribe for more stories about finding your voice when it matters most. Money was never the lesson. Respect was.